This is you right now. An empty shell disturbed by no one. But if I do this, you're no longer empty. However, now you're easily disturbed. It's very difficult to remain static when you are filled with emotions, but that is what you should strive for. This is a quote from a character, a wise old master, Master 𝗸𝘆𝘂, in an anime called Blade and Soul. And while I admittedly didn't think very much of the anime itself, the powerful lesson taught in this relatively short scene has completely reshaped the way I deal with negative emotions, and has led to what I now personally refer to as the water jar or bowl method. If you see this bowl as a representation of you as a person, and the water your emotions, then in the state the bowl is in currently, filled to the brim, in that state, the surface of the water, or your emotional state, is easily disturbed. And these disturbances can manifest as any number of negative emotions, be it fear, anxiety, jealousy, and the forces that cause these disturbances, be they external, like a minor disagreement with a coworker or superior, or being misunderstood by a family member or a friend, or internal, due to negative thought patterns like with anxiety or depression. Regardless of their origin, these disturbances are often unavoidable. And so, considering that, it would seem to me that being an empty shell would make life a lot easier. Because if the goal is to remain static, it doesn't get any more static than emptiness. But at the end of Master 𝗸𝘆𝘂's quote from before, he says that despite the fact that it is very difficult to remain static when you are filled with emotions, that is what you should strive for. And he goes on to explain why. If you are empty, nothing can affect you, but you won't be able to fill yourself or anyone else. Now, this I feel is important advice for everyone, but especially so for artists in my opinion. If you are empty, while you aren't affected by anything negatively, you also can't affect anyone else. You have nothing to share, positive or negative. But conversely, if you are filled with emotions, you can share those emotions and stir the hearts of others. I believe that the ability to communicate feelings, emotions, and things either difficult or impossible to properly communicate in everyday conversation is an artist's greatest strength. It's what inspires my love for the craft, and it's what gives me the motivation to pick up my pen or stylus in these creatively dark times. Alphonse believed that the expression of emotion actually defines an artist. As he said in his lectures on art, the expression of beauty is by emotion. The person who can communicate his emotions to the soul of the other is the artist. And so to attempt to empty oneself completely of all emotion or to numb yourself to it is to forego this incredibly powerful, near superhuman ability. Even if you were successful in doing so, as Master 𝗸𝘆𝘂 said, you wouldn't be living. It would be the same as death. Great, so now that I've expressed how the water jar method is effective for increasing appreciation for the feeling and expression of emotion, now we can look at how to use this method to do so. And for that, I think it's important to note that while Master 𝗸𝘆𝘆 said that the goal is to remain static, I don't think it's realistic to think that we'll be static all the time. In fact, I think that it's important to acknowledge that your emotional state will be disturbed at times. Like for me personally, when a negative emotion surfaces, I like to mentally picture that bowl of water and focus on the surface of the water just after it's been disturbed. The ring created by that disturbance will travel across the surface of the water, but it will eventually dissipate, and the surface of the water will become still once again. So in that way, I try to allow that negativity to flow through me, striving not to fight or suppress it. And remember that stilling the waters, so to speak, is not removing or getting rid of those emotions. It's allowing them space to be heard and felt, and then allowing them to pass on. And sometimes this process will take a lot longer than others. And as handy as this mental model is, it doesn't make dealing with negative emotions easy. And some feelings or emotional states are just too complex to be solved with such a simple process. But for me, someone who's naturally pretty low energy, it helps me not to waste energy fighting or trying to suppress my negative feelings. It ends up leaving me with more energy overall to share with others through my art or otherwise. And maybe it can help you too. And I thought it might be nice to note that all art in this video, however unskillfully, was made by me. And despite my skill level, I hope to continue to share what I have to offer from my jar in future videos.